Today's topic: why satellites are a joke, according to a flat earther. First of all, I want to thank all my patrons, members, donors and subscribers. All of you are important for me. Thank you very much. I did have a look at the community tab at Taboo Conspiracy's channel, and his latest post was a lot of good information here and a link to a video. The video was called Why Satellites Are a Joke, and it's on a channel called Flat Earth and Coffee. Let's start looking at this dumpster fire.
Hey guys, Bobby Thompson back with another video, and in this video I want to talk about why satellites are a joke. So without further ado, we're going to cover 9 reasons why I feel satellites are a joke. So reason number 1, you've seen a satellite being deployed. So if you've ever seen a satellite being deployed, you'll know what I mean. Number 2, all photos of satellites in space are cartoons. Number 3, you can't see photos of planes from space. Number 4, when you zoom out on Earth, it turns into a cartoon in Google Earth. Number 5, we wouldn't need Satelloons if satellites were real. Number 6, NASA is the largest consumer of helium in the world. Number 7, there are GPS dead spots all over the world. Number 8, Loran was doing the job long before cartoon satellites and for less. And number 9, the 8,700 mile per hour mesh trilateration network.
Okay, that's his 9 reasons why he thinks satellites are a joke. Let's look closer to this.
So, if you've seen a satellite being deployed, you'll know the hilarity of this, of satellites. So this first clip we're going to look at came from this video here, which is from the International Astronautical Federation YouTube channel, and it's from 1984, STS-51A Discovery. And let's just go right to that video.
That is just a quick scenes of life in orbit. Our first task, of course, was to deploy Telesat. It was a nighttime deploy, and so this is a TV picture, nighttime TV picture of the deploy. It looks more...
See the wire? There's the wire pulling the little model satellite out of the model space shuttle. So if you want to see this video for yourself, I won't, for brevity, I won't replay it, but just go to YouTube and search 1984 STS-51A Discovery. Or if you want to type in the URL directly, this is the URL. Feel free to stop the video and type that in. The next video I'm going to show you is from 1983. STS-8 Challenger came from the same YouTube channel. And if you want to search for this video, it's 1983 STS-8 Challenger, or you can just type in this URL directly. Let's check it out.
But there were very few vibrations of any sort. Here's a picture of the...
And do you see the giant head here? There's the nose, eyes, forehead, mouth. So this is nothing more than a model, right? This is a model, and they made the mistake of, I don't know if the editor just missed this or, but there was a giant head in the background.
The original video he used have a very low resolution, it's 240p. Both sequences he shown is filmed from inside of the Challenger, and what you see is reflections in the window they are filming through. This is debunked so many times.
So all photos of satellites in space are cartoons. If you Google satellites in space, you'll see stuff like this. First off, I want to point out that we're led to believe that there are tens of thousands of satellites orbiting the Earth, but we've never seen them from any of the supposed ISS or any other footage we get from any other satellites. We never happen to catch a satellite in between whatever we're viewing from and Earth.
The purpose of satellites is not to convince flat earthers that satellites are real. But still there are satellites that are taking pictures of other objects in the sky. For instance, military satellites are spying on other military satellites. But if you look at this image, it's from a MaxR satellite taking a perfect photo of ISS.
All these are cartoons, right? Go to go to Google yourself, type in satellites in space or real satellite, whatever search term you want, and just click on them. And they're all images. And you can see, obviously, none of the dimensions match, right? Look at this, I don't know, I guess this is Earth. It's got a glowing background and glowing space here. This one's got a drastic curve. This one's got even more of a curve. This one has less of a curve. This one's showing multiple satellites in space, right? None of this is real. This one shows no stars. This one has stars. These are all cartoons, right? So you can't see a picture of a real, authentic satellite in space.
And no one claims that it is real images. It's illustrations. Oh dear.
You can't see photos of planes from space. So what does that mean? Well, let's add a little context to this. What's the busiest airport in the world? It's the Atlanta airport, which continues to be the world's busiest airport with 4.7 million seats. And we'll switch over to Google Earth here. And this is Atlanta's airport. Okay, we're led to believe that these are satellite photos. I don't know why they'd be coming in at an angle, right? You would think that all this imagery would be shot straight down, but this is Atlanta International Airport, or whatever it's called, ATL Hartsfield Jackson, and I guess it's made up of a couple different terminals. But if we zoom out, now we can see these planes, no problem. Look at this, I can zoom in. So the higher up, imagine 35,000 feet higher than this, a plane would be bigger. And we zoom out and we zoom out. Now we're looking, if you've ever been to an airport, if you've ever flown, we're looking at airspace here, right? And one thing you will never find at any height, okay, you can sit here and go back and forth in heights. You're never gonna find an airplane, right? Of any kind.
But still you can see airplanes in the air flying on Google Earth. There are groups out on the internet sharing the coordinates to show this. If you bother to look it up, you would find evidence for this. Let's see his next proof. In this one I will speed some parts up.
We wouldn't need Satelloons if satellites were real. So Project Echo was the first passive communications satellite experiment. Each of the two American spacecraft launched in 1960 and 1964 were metallized balloon satellites. So the first satellites were balloons. They were just helium balloons, and they would fly around the Earth, the plane, whatever you think it is, at 1,000 miles up. At least so they want us to believe. Google admits...
While many of us take the internet for granted, large parts of the world are still unconnected.
All right, so, talking more about Satelloons, it's obviously a mature technology. That's an old video, probably 5 years old, maybe older, maybe 7 years old. That was when it was LTE. Today, we obviously use 3G and 5G, mostly 5G. So they can send these things up. They can manage which direction they go. They can make them do loops over certain areas. We can set up networks anywhere. There's no reason that can't provide GPS signaling as well. If a satellite can do it from space, there's no reason why we can't do it with a mesh network of Satelloons. So moving on to the next reason, NASA is the largest consumer of helium in the world. So this would only corroborate that NASA is actually using Satelloons.
It's not a secret that we use high-altitude balloons for many different things, often scientific purposes. This doesn't prove that satellites are fake.
There are GPS dead spots all over the world, and these can be experienced on land, they can be experienced in the ocean. Let's look at this. This is from Discovery Channel, and this is a very expensive ship with one of the most expensive GPS navigation systems. Listen to them say it themselves, again, right from Discovery Channel.
The Boreal's navigation system is among the best in the world, but her GPS coordinates aren't adding up. Captain...
Well, I accidentally killed that somehow. Oh, crap.
Lemire has no choice but to literally chart his own course.
First of all, the charts are not so accurate, and we need to come back in the past and to don't trust too much all the computers and the digital charts, and especially GPS. GPS accuracy is 300 meters here. And 300 meters is a big deal.
All right, so not sure if you heard that, but GPS accuracy using one of the most expensive GPS navigation systems in the world is only good for 300 meters, which is closer to 900 feet, right? And that is, we were doing that in the 60s with Loran, right? They probably actually are using Loran. I don't think personally, I don't think there is a such thing as GPS. So
Loran was an old radio system to aid in navigation. It have been shut down. It don't exist anymore. I can't find any information about this expedition they showed at Discovery Channel. Would be helpful with a link to this video. Would be helpful to know the ship, when it was filmed, where it was filmed. When I look at what technique they use at the ship to navigate, it looks like it can be quite old video. And if you look at the clothes, it looks like they are at a cold place. Then I had a look at this chart, and here you have it on a free chart at the web. This is the location. South Georgia and Sandwich Islands, quite far south. And there we have it. This is a quite old video when the coverage of satellites wasn't as great as now, and for south the angle to the satellites made the precision worse than it is today. Today the precision south or north on the Antarctic or in the Arctic are great. I'm sure that it was deliberate to not give us any information about this video so we could fact check his claims.
So I've also experienced hour-long dead zones. This is me and my wife in Colorado. We experienced this in several states. For brevity's sake, I'm not going to play all the videos, but this is just one video on a clear day with very little clouds in the sky, a sunny day, no rain, wide open country. We're in Colorado and we had no signal for roughly an hour, but let's just play the video. All right, so we're driving through Colorado and we've been waiting for GPS signal. So there's still no GPS signal. We haven't had it for about 15 minutes. And this is common when you're driving around in open country to lose GPS. There's no GPS signal here. And this has happened to us more times than we can count, and sometimes for an hour at a time. So anyone that thinks GPS signals all over the US, they are absolutely wrong. So why this is important is if GPS comes from space, there would be nothing obstructing my signal, right? I would have and those 2 weeks we were traveling around the US in the Midwest, and would routinely lose GPS signal when we were in what I'd call open country, right? Like Arizona, Colorado, Montana, would get away from big cities and your GPS goes away. Of course, when you're near a city or a town where there's a cell tower, GPS magically comes back. So if you haven't experienced that, you haven't done any traveling, if you're living in the city or in a small town, sure, no problem, GPS works. But as I've just shown you out in the ocean, why would it be different, right? If it's coming from above, the signal would be, the accuracy would be the same, right? Accuracy in the city is 6 inches. Look it up, Google it. GPS is accurate to you move your phone over 6 inches and it can tell.
Is he stupid or is he dishonest? He don't show the GPS. It's easy to show on a phone how many satellites it receives signals from, but he shows a map. Perhaps he have no internet connection and the map is online? This is a print screen from the website Marine Traffic, and here you can see ships all around the world, in the middle of the ocean, at Antarctica, in the Arctic region, and so on, far from land. It's covering all the globe. If we take a closer look at the Antarctica, we can see a lot of cruise ships, and this is information received using satellites. This is from the website Flight Radar 24. Here you also see planes all around the world. Both the system for the ships and for the airplane works in similar ways. They receive their coordinates from GPS satellites and they send out their information. If you look here on the planes, the yellow ones have the signal received by ground base stations and the blue ones are received by satellites. Then I mean the signals and the information sent from the planes. So all coordinates are received from GPS satellites.
So Loran was doing the job long before cartoon satellites and for less. So if you're not familiar with Loran, Loran was developed, I think in the 50s. Yeah, the US Navy began development of Loran. I think it was in the 50s. They certainly had it. They took over, the Coast Guard took over operations of it in 1958. I'm not going to take all day and read all this. This just came from Wikipedia, Loran. But to summarize it, the first thing is that you should know is that satellites were first made by sci-fi writer Arthur C. Clarke, who also wrote A Space Odyssey. I can't remember the exact name of the movie, but now that we know the history of satellites, let's dig into what they provide. The first bullet point was GPS. It turns out before there was space-based GPS, there was perfectly functioning global positioning system called Loran.
We all know that you have to lie to flirt. If you look at the part that I marked here, it's clear the same that I said earlier in the video. Loran have been closed down.
Which stood for Long Range Navigation. By the 1960s, Loran was already accurate to 20 feet. Now imagine the accuracy comes from how many more nodes you have in your mesh network, right? So on land, GPS positioning makes perfect sense. You have towers that can't move an inch, and the more towers you're around, you can do more, we'd call this triangulation on land. In GPS, the term they use is trilateration, but whatever you want to call it. So they were at 20 feet in the 1960s, right? If you read this, you'll say they improved their performance to 20 feet. Shortly after that, Loran F and Loran came out with even higher accuracy. So that we're talking in the 50s and 60s with far less. Think about this. Think about when the first cell phones came out, right? When did people start getting those? In the late 80s, early 90s? So just towers, cell towers and radio towers were so less dense back then. And now we have these everywhere. Of course, if we were using Loran for these towers and nodes, whatever you want to call them, we certainly would have the accuracy.
This is an image that I took when I was on the way into a fjord in Norway. The name of the fjord is Trollfjorden, and I have my students from one of my workshops in the boat. It's a narrow fjord surrounded with high mountains, and it's no antennas on the mountains. This image is taken in from the fjord and out to the place where the first image was taken. And here I still have GPS coverage. And no antennas, no buoys, and no balloons.
Of 6 inches. Now the last thing I want to point out is what I call the 8,700 mile per hour mesh trilateration network, which is a mess. It is a problem. And the way GPS would work in space with satellites is you would have multiple satellites circling the Earth twice per day and at a height of 20,000 kilometers, and you would use trilateration, and it uses a rate times time, basically. So it's sending pings back, and it's using trilateration between these different nodes, right? The problem is, let me put it together for you here. Our GPS satellite's geostationary. Just to kind of recap what I said, they circle the Earth at an altitude of 20,000 kilometers or 13,000 miles, and they complete 2 full orbits a day. They are not in a geostationary orbit, meaning satellites are wrapping around the Earth, right? They're not even stationary. So how fast are they going? Well, there's multiple orbit calculators you can use. I checked it with several, but the one I went with was for the picture proof, so to speak, was Kaizen. And your flight velocity is 3.8, let's just round and say 3.9 kilometers per second, okay? So what's that in miles per hour? Something we should all know. That's roughly 8,700 miles per hour. That's how fast this mesh network is wrapping around the supposed sphere of the Earth. 8,700 miles an hour. And you're trying to do trilateration with that, right? So first off, for that to even work, if you talk to someone who does any type of development, right, those nodes would have to, or satellites, whatever you want to call them, would have to not move an inch in between each other. They would have to be as if they were, punched on the outside of a ball, right? Because if I move my phone 6 inches, how does the mesh network not know what it was one of its nodes not moving 6 inches while it's zipping around the Earth at 8,700 miles an hour? If any of that mesh network was just moving around at all, it couldn't trilaterate correctly. You certainly couldn't get accuracy to 6 inches, right? How do they know? How do they know it's the phone that moved and not it that moved, right? It can only sense the rate, right? It can only sense the time and the rate of those pings. So if an object moves like that in space, how does it know it was this one that moved, one of the satellites, or the phone that moved, right? So these are all moving. Well, I can tell you that mesh network would have to be perfect. But even then, it would have problems because it's moving around the Earth. Really, it would only be non-problematic if that mesh network were geostationary. But even then, you couldn't tell me that you can have all these objects that don't move within 6 inches. Now, in your head, you may be thinking about, you've seen a drone show, and all these drones can stay right beside each other, and that's what you're thinking, or you may have thought that. That's because they're using GPS. That's how they can stay and move around like that perfectly. But I contend that GPS comes from the ground, and the reason we can have exact coordinates of something in space is because those nodes on the ground don't move at all. They're perfectly fixed on a flat stationary plane, right? If you think that would work on a mesh network that's freely moving around, doing 80,700 miles an hour, you've got some disconnects in your brain. So that was my closing. In closing, what makes more sense? I already summed it up. Those are my 9-ish reasons for why satellites are a joke. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.
I will not bother to explain how the GPS system works. It's quite complicated and you can find information online exactly how it works. But his argument is that he don't believe it would work and therefore it's fake. I have showed you his whole video and he haven't presented any evidence at all. One part of the video was made by him, the one with the mobile phone, where he claimed that the GPS didn't work. He didn't receive any GPS signals. But if you looked at the phone, it didn't show anything about the GPS, only a map. This whole video is based on I don't understand, I don't believe, therefore it's fake. And the well-known flat earther Taboo conspiracy thinks it's a lot of good information in this video. Oh dear, how stupid can you get? I received drone number 18 today and I have already sent it to Ukraine. So in a couple of days they will have it by the front and hopefully it will save lives of Ukrainian soldiers. If you want to help, use PayPal if you want to donate money. It don't have to be big donations, every donation helps. This video was much longer than the normal videos I produce. I hope you liked it. Please leave a comment in the comment section. Was the video too long? What do you think? Okay, that was all for now. See you soon. Have a nice day. Bye.